Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. I'm just going to give everyone one more minute and we'll commence promptly at 11:01. Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll get started. So today's event is all on security, and we're going to be focusing predominantly on the Microsoft 365 stack. And with the Microsoft 365 stack, we're going to be specifically looking at the feature sets within enterprise mobility and securities, which is one of the add-ons that you'll get for the Microsoft 365 environment, focusing on the two different SKUs available for this license type, looking at the business aspect of it and the enterprise to try and cover off all bases. So this is the third webinar in the series. We're trying to cover off all aspects within the Microsoft 365 license type, which you may or may not have already. And within this, we're trying to keep it structured. So the first event was predominantly aimed at building effective remote teams, given the position we found ourselves in 3 weeks ago. Then it was enabling the other services and features on top of that with our ability to then look at Microsoft Azure at event 5. We are conducting these webinars on the same day every week. There have been some slight amendments to the times. For example, today it's now moved to 11 a.m. As a result of some personal reasons. Mainly my wife has midwife appointments at 10 o'clock. So we've had to move a couple of these to 11 a.m. So today's event is all around security, and we're going to be covering off what options are available to you, how quickly and easily are these things enabled, how does it protect personal devices given the position that we're in now, where a lot of people are probably having to use their personal devices as opposed to corporate devices, which kind of bleeds out kind of the ecosystem, what's typically within your control as an organization. How do we balance the usability and security of these services? Because typically when you apply security to something, it prohibits the user's ability to do something in the way that they would like to, or something was designed. And what are the limitations and how can we manage it? And we'll be wrapping up with a quick Q&A session towards the end. For any questions that can't be answered during this session, we will follow up with you individually. So very quick intro. My name is Mark Alford. I'm the Cloud Solutions Architect at Circle IT. I've been here for 13 years now and working predominantly on cloud services since the incarnation of Microsoft Azure and Office 365 in its very first iteration, which was called BBOS back in the day. So I've been working on this for quite some time now, and as an organization, we are 17 years old and we're very much focusing on cloud services and adoption strategies for our customers and prospects for the foreseeable. And just briefly touching on some of the relationships, we do work in public and private sector with a whole raft of customers and use cases and references on cloud services, be that infrastructure as a service, backup and DR as a service, Office 365 adoption programs. We're more than happy to share those with you post this event. So on to today's topic. It's security in Microsoft 365. And for those of you that may already be on Office 365, Microsoft 365 is the license type above Office 365 that includes Office 365 and Windows 10 and Enterprise Mobility and Security, which is aimed at providing a complete solution with security built in. So it isn't a bolt-on for your license types, whereas it will be with Office 365. This is purely a security product built in as a service for the Office 365 environment, as well as devices and everything else that comes around the periphery. So within Microsoft 365, you will get your Office 365 applications, and there's various different SKUs for this. So you would get what you're familiar with within your current licensing. So you'll get the Office suite of applications. You'll get Exchange Online, OneDrive, Teams, and a few other services. And you'll also get your Exchange Online archiving. In addition to that, you would get your Advanced Security suite. So you would get things like Advanced Threat Protection for email within Office 365. You will have multi-factor authentication. You can enforce Windows Defender and BitLocker services to encompass additional security on end-user devices. You will also get Windows 10 Business and Enterprise. So if you're currently licensing your Windows 10 services through volume license or anything else, this includes your Windows 10 license, either business or enterprise SKUs. And that is really useful for organizations that still haven't made the jump from Windows 7 yet. Although the support for Windows 7 has now lapsed, Windows 10 is obviously the next iteration of that upgrade path. And if you haven't made that jump yet, this is where it becomes a lot more cost effective to bundle that in. But you also get your internal data leak and prevention services, which includes things like data loss prevention and Azure information protection, which we'll touch on later. But on top of all of this, you also get your device management. So you will get Intune. You will have Windows 10 Credential Guard and single sign-on capability. And throughout all of this license platform, you will also have the capability of using Windows Autopilot, which is essentially a zero-touch deployment service that Microsoft offer in order for you to be able to ship a device out to somebody's home or a remote office, and all they need to do is log in with their Office 365 credentials to be able to provision that device. So it's providing a full suite of services within the Microsoft 365 package to give you the capability of doing a lot more than what you're currently doing with just the standard Office 365 or with typical on-premise solutions. Microsoft 365 is aimed at unlocking creativity. It's built for teamwork, and it's all fundamentally structured around Microsoft Teams these days. And it's integrated for simplicity. So you're not having to bolt on various products in order to deliver the security services or the collaboration or the teamwork or the unified voice. This is all underpinned on a single platform that you can manage and monitor and maintain very effectively with existing support teams. So what we're going to be covering off specifically today is the intelligent security aspect of Microsoft 365. And from this, Microsoft has deemed it what they class as a modern workplace experience. So all the items that are bundled in within Microsoft 365 are listed on the right-hand side of this slide, which allows you to have complete governance tools. You can manage devices anywhere on any device. It allows you to have self-service administration. You've got all your Office applications, and it brings a level of comparability and manageability for your BYOD schemes, which didn't really take off, or from what we saw, an awful lot over the past kind of 5 years, purely because nobody in any organization, from a personal device point of view, wants to have their organization manage that device. Microsoft 365 changed the dynamic on that now so that you can have application management as well as device management. So it gives a very good blend of both worlds. We'll now cover off the licensing options that are available for both business and enterprise. We've put together a very brief menu of what questions you should ask yourselves to determine the right licensing. A lot of the features that we're talking about today, whilst they're bundled into the Microsoft 365 license type, you can license these individually for your Office 365 subscriptions that you may already have. So for example, if you wanted multi-factor authentication with conditional access for your existing Office 365 deployment, you can purchase that separately. What today's conversation is going to be is around all of these product sets so that you can get an overview of how to secure these environments with the current challenging scenario that we find ourselves in. So Microsoft 365 has recently gone through a rebrand for the business SKUs. You now have 3 primary SKUs available to you to license. So Microsoft 365 Basic is aimed at organizations, kind of sub 50 users that want cloud native management. So this includes your cloud services only. The business standard element of this includes your desktop applications as well as the business basic applications for so Exchange Online, Teams, but it also includes your Office suite apps. And the Microsoft 365 Business Premium includes the security elements on top of this and device management and governance and everything else I've mentioned so far. That also gives you the capability of doing Windows Virtual Desktop licensing on top of this as well, because it includes your Windows 10 license. And I'll touch on that shortly. For the enterprise SKUs, we've still very much got the E3 and E5 SKUs, as well as your frontline worker SKUs of F1 and F3. So if you'll find yourself in retail or manufacturing where you may have people that work on the shop floor that don't necessarily need a full-blown Office 365 or Microsoft 365 license type, but that you would like them to have the capability to interact in the same way as what we would class as your normally licensed users would, that's what the frontline licenses are there for. So the family of products that we're now talking about is Microsoft 365. We then categorize them into the audience and then the different SKUs that are available to you. So what are the typical business challenges that we see? So the traditional approach of delivering IT infrastructure and services, it's pretty much a monolithic approach and a kind of increase over time organically over what has been added. So there may be PCs being bought outside of a refresh cycle. There may be different management platforms for software and application deployments, as well as utilization of different versions of Office and Windows with no commonality across the board. There's also third-party applications that may be in use to deliver various services, maybe interaction with clients or suppliers, where Dropbox may be in use. And given where we're at the moment of using personal devices and the blend of people wanting to use personal devices and working remotely will inevitably become the norm. It leads to a quite fragmented approach to delivering security. So if you're on your traditional infrastructure, which is in your office, you would typically have to provide a VPN in order to get access to that information, which is quite prohibitive and restrictive in the sense because it then has to drag the information across the line. You may have to use remote desktop services and such in order to be able to deliver the security that your organization determines. What Microsoft 365 brings to the fold is the ability to get rid of those walls in order for you to deliver it on any device, anywhere, at any time, but still have the security principles overlaid on top. So I'd like you to answer these questions, obviously individually to yourselves, around can you answer yes to them? So do you know who is accessing your data? Can you grant access to your data based on risk in real time? Can you quickly find and react to a breach? Can you protect your data on devices in the cloud and in transit? And one of the most important is, do your users love their work experience? Now, whilst that might sound a bit cheesy, we're trying to present solutions to organizations that don't restrict or prohibit users delivering services that they would want to achieve. So we now talk about some of the services built into Microsoft 365 and what options are available. And it's very much a layered approach to security. And what we're trying to achieve here is to look at the different areas of security for the different services. So you've got your user security, your devices, your applications, your email, and your documents. Those are typically the areas that we look at when we talk about security. And traditionally, you may very well have a different service or application protecting different areas within this picture. So some of the challenges you may have is compromised login credentials, weak credentials or suspicious locations that people log in from. There's malware on the devices. Unmanaged devices has corporate data on them. So maybe you've got some sales teams out in the field that have a personal phone or a personal device that they have to send themselves emails on to be able to access it. How do you manage the security on top of those devices in terms of passwords and PINs? How do you manage what people can copy out of corporate applications? So are you allowing people to synchronize their work email with their personal computer? How do you protect your email? And then what happens with documents? So if somebody has synced their documents to their personal device, how do you make sure that if an employee leaves that they don't have access to that data anymore? So what Microsoft 365 does to underpin the security on top of this, it adds identity, device, application, email, and document security to each of these. And the services that brings into this for identity is Azure Active Directory, features like multi-factor authentication, which has the ability to not be prohibitive in the sense that if somebody's logging in from a trusted location or a trusted device, it won't prompt them for multi-factor authentication. So it won't be intrusive to their daily activities. You've also got the capability of delivering self-service password reset within this license type. So you're reducing the number of calls and tickets that you have come into your service desk. From a device security standpoint, you've got your Microsoft Defender antivirus. You have fully centralized management of mobile and laptops with Intune, and that includes Android, Windows, Mac OS. Have the capability of remote wiping, BitLocker, so you can enforce a lot of standards across the board as a norm and de facto for your organization, which then in turn leads to what applications, email, and documents people can see off the top of that. We can also restrict copy and paste and saving to external applications such as Dropbox or personal versions of OneDrive. And we can also apply advanced threat protection against zero-day attacks, data loss prevention, and email restrictions like do not forward for sensitive data. And that encompasses all of the Azure information protection elements that come into play, as well as tracking sensitive documents. So from the Microsoft 365 for Business, whilst it's a business SKU, you will also get all of those functionalities or functionality within the enterprise SKU as well. The business versions of these settings are cut down versions of the fully fledged products that are available in the enterprise SKUs. But all of the feature sets that we're talking about within this diagram are available to business users, which are aimed at 300 users or less. That's not to say that you can't use the enterprise SKUs for anybody that's less than 300 users, but Microsoft have discounted the business SKU quite heavily to accommodate the size of organizations. So what does this mean when we actually talk about these feature sets? So if we look at this from an identity, device, application, email, and document, there's the protection from cyber threats, which we have seen an increase in the amount of attacks and potential opportunities that people will have now that people are working remotely. There's a lot of opportunists out there that are trying to do a lot more phishing attempts, and there are various services out there that will protect you with this. And we'll concentrate on talking about the threats from cyber today, but given the amount of time that we've got, but we're more than happy and would encourage you to reach out to us should you want to discuss any of the other features. All of these different aspects that we've got on this slide are available for you to deliver in a modular fashion. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing approach to this. You can very much deliver something as simple as enforcing MFA for admins or enforcing strong passwords for your organization across the board, just with one element of that license. You don't have to go and implement Intune, or you don't have to implement Azure Information Protection to deliver this. You can look at this from your own organization's point of view identify the high-risk activities that could be problematic for your organization, and deliver these individual projects. So the ones that we're going to talk about today are the top row, just to give you some examples of kind of how this works in practice and how to get these completed. So from an identity point of view, we're talking about the items that are built into Microsoft 365 for Business for identity protection. So this is something as simple as delivering self-service password resets, multi-factor authentication, which can also integrate third-party applications where they support it, and conditional user access, which is a new addition to this license type. So quite quickly, you could deliver something for your organization, particularly where they may be out of the office, where you may not have an Azure hybrid connection already established for your Active Directory. You can give the ability for users to reset their password and have the ability for that to synchronize back so that they can access Office 365 services remotely. Clearly, that will enable them to be self-sufficient, but it would also give you the ability to start looking at multi-factor authentication services where not already in use. And as a bare minimum, that should be applied to any global admin account that you have across your organization. When we look at conditional access, this is something that is very, I want to say complex, but it's complex in how it actually works in the back end, but to configure, it's actually pretty straightforward for you as an organization once you've defined what you want people to be able to achieve. So conditional access initially looks at the conditions of people logging in. So you can use multiple users and roles and different sources. You can look at different devices, physical locations, and different applications and authentication methods. What that does is uses Microsoft Azure's machine learning, real-time evaluation, and policies across the global infrastructure that Microsoft have in play for this, and applies all of that intelligence onto your tenancy. What that enables them to do is to utilize known bad information from other instances that are using Azure Active Directory, and it applies it back to your instance. So if somebody is logging in from a remote location that is known to be a bad IP address, maybe somewhere in Africa or any other country that is known as a bad actor, and you will automatically get protected from that IP address from your tenancy. So somebody's user credentials did get stolen, it would apply all of these real-time evaluation metrics across that tenancy and prohibit somebody logging in from that IP address from within your location. It can also identify session risks and apply an effective policy based in real time. So if I'm logging in from somewhere in China, for example, and I'm not allowed to log in there, or I'm logging in from a non-trusted device, you can define a real-time risk to say whether you want to allow them to access the content that they've requested, whether they're allowed to synchronize that content, or whether they only get a web browser version. And that allows you to do various things within there then to block or allow access, to force MFA if it's from an unknown location that they've been to previously, or you could even force a password reset if it thinks that the credentials have actually been stolen. And that can apply not only to your Microsoft services, it can also apply to any third-party applications you may have in use. So that could be Slack, it could be Trello, it could be Dropbox, which has legitimate uses across the board, it could be Jira. There's hundreds of cloud services out there that this can integrate into, but what it can also do is integrate into your on-premise applications and web applications as well. So it provides a fully comprehensive set of features to provide conditional access to your identity to manage those. And your identity in a cloud native world is pretty much it's pretty much your key to your front door, because you've moved some of your services outside of your what we would class as your traditional walled garden, which requires physical access to the infrastructure. You are moving your services out to a public cloud. Therefore, the requirement to protect their identity is very, very important. The third area for this is device and application security. So Microsoft Intune allows you to provide fully comprehensive device management and security for your mobile devices and your Windows 10 Pro devices, but it can also provide application management. Now, I'll cover this off in a little bit more detail shortly, but the very two distinct methods for this is mobile device management and mobile application management. So if it's a corporately owned device, you would typically enroll that into device management. For somebody's personal device, so my personal mobile phone that I access all my work content on, you would roll out mobile application management. So on an iPhone, you would restrict access to iOS Mail to synchronize your corporate account and enforce them to synchronize the mail or set up their account within the Office version of Outlook. That means that you can control the application and enforce device pins. You can enforce a remote wipe should their user account gets disabled, or you can enforce various other things within there, such as not copying and pasting from there. But that gives you fully comprehensive management over the data that is on that device for that application, and only for the corporate profile. So if they do have multiple accounts set up with an Outlook on their personal device, it will only affect the corporate accounts, which is a very big game changer when it comes to delivering control over corporate data on personal devices. And for the Windows 10 device configuration and the application of the security, rather than jumping into a web browser, I've taken a screenshot of some of the settings that are available to you. And this is a pretty much out-of-the-box deployment method. So in order to configure a lot of these services, they are tick boxes for you to turn on and off, or toggles. So as you'll see, there's a lot of default items within this that allows you to set the baseline configuration for your Windows 10 devices. So if they are corporately owned devices, and you may have had various different software or services managing this previously, maybe Group Policy or SCCM or SCOM or whatever that may be, you can now manage this through a global web-enabled dashboard. So it doesn't matter where the device is, provided it's got an internet connection and it's checked in at least once previously to get these settings, you can see the compliance of any device at any given time, wherever they are. They don't need to be in the office to check it back into a server. They can quite easily see what settings are being applied. And what we typically get is questions from prospects or clients as to how good the antivirus services are within Microsoft's product sets. I'm not advocating that you would ditch anything else that you may be familiar with that may already be fully ingrained into your service catalog and is fully rolled out. What I'm trying to advocate from this is that Microsoft Defender is actually categorized as one of the top antivirus products on the marketplace at the moment. It's very much a layered approach to security. So you will get this as part of your license types within a Microsoft 365 license. So it's not going to cause any problems through utilizing it should you want to decrease the spend of other product sets within your portfolio. Okay, bear with me. PowerPoint just crashed. Sorry about this all. Nothing like a live presentation. Okay. Right, sorry about that. So moving on to email security. Some of you may already have a separate spam filtering service. Now, email security isn't a spam filtering service, it's an advanced threat protection. While spam filtering is built into Office 365 as a baseline kind of feature within there, Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection goes a lot further than just spam filtering. What this does, it takes, again, the global platform that Microsoft sees from Office 365 in terms of the mail that's going in and out, the virus definitions that it sees, and it allows you to apply filters on incoming suspicious attachments and URLs that you get sent. So if a sender emails an attachment, that will go into a sandbox. So if there's any executable in there, such as Word, PDF, zip file, things like that, it will run it before actually delivering it to the recipient. If it finds any malicious content within there, so if it's doing any registry calls, if it's trying to ask for privileged elevation for user access, it will mark it as unsafe, and you have the options to configure within Advanced Threat Protection whether you deliver the original email without the attachment or you just delete the entire thing. If it's safe, it will obviously deliver it to the recipient. And the malicious links element of this as well, if you get sent the URL as part of the categorization for this again, this will redirect it to protection.outlook.com, which will run that URL briefly to ensure that it's a safe website and then allow the recipient to go there should it be safe. Now, this isn't a catch-all and give you 100% protection, because they may very well be legitimate websites that have been exposed, for example. So this is an added layer of protection, which you're utilizing the machine learning capability of Office 365 and Microsoft 365 to deliver something that is far greater than traditional on-premise solutions. So what we've had time to cover off today is the top line on how we can kind of protect from cyber threats. And a lot of the items that we've talked about can be delivered, as I mentioned, in modular fashion. So if you only wanted to add the attachment, safe links and anti-spoofing capability, that is a license that you can purchase on your Office 365 subscription today, which is called Advanced Threat Protection, and that can be enabled fairly quickly for the organization to add a significant level of additional protection. Now, what we're going to cover off is some additional security options within this for the enterprise. And within the enterprise mobility and security toolset, there are two SKUs. There's an E3 and E5. E3 is the entry level. And the entry level essentially allows you to do everything that we've got on the screen near enough. And there's different levels of the services available within this. E5, the main differentiator for it is the cloud app security and the ability to automatically classify documents within Azure Information Protection. There are other subtle differences within this, but I'll kind of cover off these in a brief while. So what we've got within enterprise mobility and security, if you look at this as a whole picture, it's a comprehensive security service for the entire 365 platform, which again is a bolt-on for Office 365, but it's included in the Microsoft 365 license type. Azure Active Directory Premium gives you the features that we referred to earlier. So you've got multi-factor authentication, you've got conditional access, you've got self-service password resets, you've got single sign-on capabilities to be delivered in here, which in turn links into Cloud App Security. So you can integrate your applications into it. Cloud App Security allows you to integrate with your firewall service to inspect the traffic that is going out of your firewall that could be destined for Box or ServiceNow or Dropbox or Salesforce or G Suite. So you get a complete comprehensive idea and information of what information is being transferred from your organization into these services. So that covers the concept of shadow IT, because these are likely to be in use within your organization if you haven't already adopted cloud services, because people will try to circumvent typical security standards that are in place. So in addition to identifying it, it can also block access into these environments as well. From the Azure Active Directory Premium, going back across to Advanced Threat Analytics, that's something that can integrate into your on-premise environment to look at your traditional server and Active Directory environment as well to highlight risks. Microsoft Intune protects the devices and applications within your environment, and overlaying all of this is Azure Information Protection for any documents that sit within that cloud environment, so within SharePoint, Teams, or OneDrive. So to bring some of the other items that we've talked about to life, this is the safe link detection. So should somebody get sent a URL and they've clicked it, it checks it in real time, and this is the type of notification that will get set up or sent to the user before allowing them to actually access that website. All of that is done in real time. So you have the capability within this license type to be able to provide that service to your end users. You can also safeguard your data by protecting it from data leakage through applying policies, through data loss and prevention. You also have the ability to encrypt the devices with BitLocker, and you can manage all of those settings from within Intune, so it's truly cloud native. If you have an Intune deployment already or use SCCM in larger deployments, there is a hybrid connection between Intune and SCCM that allows you to determine which elements get managed by which service. And from within the application side of things, this is the type of thing that you would typically see. So you can enforce a PIN to access the app, so not the device itself. You have the ability to require a reset if the login fails a certain number of times. And you can apply that to various different applications. So as you can see from the screenshot on the left, this isn't just applying to Outlook, that can also be done for the other Office applications in the suite. Now, for those of you familiar with NIST, what I've tried to do on the next few slides is link back the tool sets that Microsoft provide into this framework. So for those of you not familiar with NIST, it's a cybersecurity framework which is all done voluntarily, and it's aimed at reducing the cybersecurity risk within a lot of organizations. As it's a framework, you can choose which elements you work towards. But typically, we have the requirement as an organization particularly to the ICO around data loss, is around identifying, protecting, detecting, respond and recover. So we need to demonstrate our ability to be able to deliver on these areas. By not having a solution that can cover a lot of these areas, it leaves you open to risk and to external threats. Now, within the Microsoft portfolio, the Microsoft 365 portfolio, there is a solution that covers each of these areas. All of these areas need to be underpinned with your own internal policies in order to invoke what happens in the instance of a breach, for example. So you need to have your own kind of run books with key stakeholders in play and a process to work through for this. But I'm going to talk you through how the tool sets in Microsoft 365 enable this framework to be applied to your organization. So if we run this through as an example from an identification point of view, most organizations will still have a Windows Server Active Directory environment. So the first thing we need to do is establish a hybrid connection with Azure Active Directory. That is done through Azure AD Connect, and that will synchronize your users, and it will also synchronize your devices into Azure Active Directory. So that gives you the first thing. That then allows you to establish your role-based access control, as well as your guest user access into other environments should you need to do an element of business-to-business collaboration or third-party collaboration. To understand the asset management side of things, this is because you've now integrated your on-premise Active Directory with Azure AD, you can leverage Intune to manage the devices within this, and that covers macOS, Windows, and Android. On top of that, because you've got Azure Active Directory now as your primary identity source, you can integrate applications like the ones on screen, so Dropbox, Box, Concur, DocuSign, Salesforce, you name it, into your Azure Active Directory. So you've got a single identity to manage all of these services. So if somebody was to leave the organization, all you have to do is disable that one user account, and that will stop access onto all of these services. You can also bring your live and business apps into Azure Active Directory as well to underpin that security, and overlay the cloud app discovery to identify third-party applications that are in use that may be not known to the organization. And you can lock those in the same way, either restricting access or bringing them into that single sign-on capability. And on top of all of that, realistically, as you're paying for the licenses for Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint, is to move the data out of those third-party applications and encourage the utilization of Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive. From an Intune perspective, I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but this is a visual representation of how those devices are managed and applications are managed. So the entire device can be managed by mobile device management, but the mobile application management policies allow you to only look at the applications themselves. So you're not impacting the overall device, which is typically one of the largest barriers we come into. In terms of identifying your compliance, it's quite difficult sometimes to measure where you're at against certain standards. Within the Microsoft 365 license and service that you're taking out, you have a compliance center, which allows you to understand how you're doing against different compliance standards. So that isn't just around ISO, it could be around NIST, it could be around HIPAA, it could be around various different ones that you may be working towards. And it allows you to understand where you're at against those compliance settings within your Microsoft 365 tenancy. And not only that, it will also give you recommendations as what you should be doing in terms of the compliance. And that will give you something to work towards and a framework to work within the Microsoft 365 compliance portal. To identify risks, you've also got the ability to utilize Microsoft Secure Score. So looking at all of the different feature sets from a security standpoint within the Microsoft 365 platform, it will analyze you against where it thinks your organization should be. So it'll give you an overall score, and there is a maximum score as well. And within each of these, it's broken down into the areas that we referred to earlier around identity, data, device, apps, and infrastructure. Infrastructure is when you add Azure resources into this overall tenancy, but it would also give you improvement actions. So within this, you can see improvement actions for example, if you don't have multi-factor authentication enabled for everyone, it will give you a recommendation. And as you implement that recommendation, you can see your security score increase. So that's something that is typically used throughout most organizations to get them to a better security standpoint, which enables you to present that information back to the board as well as it trends your score over a period of time. The Cloud App Discovery is also used to identify risks and issues. So this is an overview of the Cloud App Discovery portal, which shows you how much data is being sent to third-party applications, as well as the risk profiles associated with them. Not only does it identify the applications, but it identifies the user. Now, there very well may be a legitimate usage to use some of these applications, but at least it gives you an opportunity to go and have the conversation with individuals within your organization as to what that legitimate usage may be. And on top of that, you've also got the business-to-business element. So if you are working very closely with a third party, it may very well be an instance for you to set up business-to-business collaboration as opposed to inviting them as a guest or as a guest within your tenancy without that connection in play, which allows you to deliver full auditing capabilities across the board. Protection, I'm not going to cover off this too much because I covered this off earlier, but conditional access allows you to protect that environment in real time. This is something that if you're overlaying this across your organization, you can demonstrate to whomever you need to, be that internal or external, that you're applying the relevant protection across the board for your environment. Further protection allows you to look at DLP policies, application protection policies, and that can work across the board. So that enables you to take content that is being restricted, maybe a classified document, and you can set restrictions in place on that document that says you're not allowed to copy and paste it into something like G Suite to send on via an email. It can also not allow you to send it on in an email as an attachment, or even be opened if it was inadvertently accessed via maybe a USB drive or something like that by an unknown recipient. So this gives you complete document level encryption and security as opposed to traditional disk level encryption. So running through that example that I've just mentioned around USB drives, if a document is encrypted with Azure Information Protection, that will mean that if a document is stored on a USB drive and somebody double clicks on that document, they will be asked for their 365 credentials. If they don't have valid 365 credentials that is specifically stipulated that can open that document, they won't be allowed to open it. And furthermore, this also goes into sending sensitive data over Teams or any other application. If you have DLP policies in play that prohibits the utilization of credit card numbers, as an example, that will say that the message is blocked, as you can see on screen, which means that it gives you a better way of complying with GDPR regulations as well as anything else that you have internally as an organization. Advanced threat protection, Intune, and certificate policies. This is essentially what I covered off earlier in terms of the real world risk. And similarly, you can have tool notifications or tooltip notifications presented, which gives you some suggestions over what you should do. So the one that we can see on screen there is you don't often get an email from that person, which appears similar to someone who has previously sent you an email, but may not be that person. So it encourages you to be a little bit more vigilant around what you're doing on your device, particularly on mobile devices. And within Azure Information Protection, this is how easy it is to classify documents. So you'll see within that drop-down menu, we have the ability to classify it as public, general, confidential, or highly confidential, which the back-end services within Microsoft 365 will deliver all of the automation services around that and what it can and can't do based on the policies that you've stipulated. And within the E5 license type, which is the top one, it can also do automatic classification. So if it comes across maybe an employee identifier, such as a payroll number or something like that, a unique identifier, it can automatically classify it as personally sensitive information, which enables the system in the back end to be able to categorize it automatically and put the relevant restrictions in play. Now, throughout all of this, one of the most important things then is how do you detect when something has gone wrong? Now, within Microsoft 365, you have a threat management dashboard, which gives you insightful information, providing you've obviously got the advanced threat protection services enabled, Windows Defender, all the other things that we've talked about today around conditional access. This will collate all of the information that is available within those tool sets and publicize it into a threat management dashboard. And this isn't death by 1,000 alerts by any means. This will very much bring the real information and high risk information to you. By all means, you can see everything else underneath that as well, but it will present the most high risk information to you so you can address that first and foremost. And you've also got the ability to see the security center within this, which again comes back to detect. And the responding, you've also got alert policies within this. What that means is that based on an alert that comes through from the security threat center or threat management dashboard, you can automatically apply actions to those alerts, which means you can start becoming a little bit more self-sufficient in terms of how you respond to these and how quickly you can respond to them. So I'm hopeful that's given you an idea of the capabilities of what is in the Microsoft 365 tool set for you. There are an awful lot more services within there, and I'm conscious we only got an hour to be able to go through these. So what we do and what we can offer as part of this is some remote workshops for you to cover this off in a lot more detail. And they aren't just on security, they are around various other things, or if there's something that springs to mind that isn't on this list or you feel would be relevant given the content we've talked about today, please feel free to jump onto circleit.co.uk/feedback form. And that would be some way that we can just capture your details quickly and we will get in contact with you. But these workshops are very two-way, so we can obviously deliver these remotely. We do them via video call, and that will go through the content. And we try and look at this as a business understanding piece for the first half of the day, and then talking about a lot of the technical aspects of the solution for the second half. For the previous events that we've delivered, if you haven't caught those, but they might be something that you want to have a look at, they are on our YouTube channel, and we'll send that through, post this as a follow-up email to thank you for attendance today. The next event is on collaboration. So it'll be a very interactive session around the feature sets that's available within Microsoft 365 and Office 365 around Teams, as opposed to what we've done today around a presentation. So it's very much going to be a demo of the services that are available to you within this to try and encourage collaboration throughout the remote working scenario we're in. So on that note, we'd like to take a couple of questions, if there have been some. So we've got a question from Ben, which I think Alan has answered already. So what are the limitations of not having an Azure Presence domain controller when using Office 365 features? Are the Azure integrated benefits worth the expense and resource? So I think what's being asked there, so Azure Active Directory, I think, is what's being asked there, is if you don't have an Azure Presence or a domain controller in Azure, can you just use Azure AD to be able to utilize all of the services we talked about today? In fact, yes, you can, but if you're retaining legacy servers, you would still need to maintain an Active Directory domain controller in its traditional sense. There's still limitations on what can be delivered, which I think Alan's gone into a little bit more detail around this, of what can be delivered, but it is very much still delivered on a traditional Active Directory domain controller if you've come from a legacy environment, which you may need LDAP services or some of the prior management functions that you needed within there. So we've also got another question from David. In the past, I was reticent to enable safe links for everyone in ATP because of the way links were rewritten in an email. After training users on checking links for potential phishing, would have needed significant re-education push. I believe this has now been addressed by a pop-up box on Hover showing the original link. Do you believe this has now been addressed to the point where safe links can be turned on without too much visible impact for end users? So it's a very good point, actually, because absolutely that was a scenario we found ourselves in previously, and we typically went through a lot of adding URLs into what we would class as a safe URL list within that feature set. It has now been kind of updated, shall we say, to introduce additional functionality as you suggested by presenting the original link over the top. But it is still relevant to provide end user training on these services. Whilst you don't want to prohibit users' ability to be able to access the information that they're getting sent, what you do want to do is try and protect the user environment and encourage them to understand what those nuances are within the tool set that has been deployed. We have got many customers using ATP as part of their daily activity. So if you want to reach out to me post this event, I'm more than happy to put you in touch with a couple of those as well to see how they've talked to their users around how they've deployed it. I'm more than happy to kind of give you some advice on how we recommend deploying it as well. So Ben's had a follow-up question. Any complications when operating a hybrid environment? So to answer that, there's multiple ways of setting up in a hybrid environment. So by using Azure AD Connect, it's pretty robust now, given the ability that it does two-way synchronization. Previous incarnations required Active Directory Federation services to deliver seamless single sign-on and things like that. But it's very much a case now where we haven't necessarily come across any limitations, shall we say, or complications when operating in a hybrid environment through synchronizing Active Directory via Azure AD Connect. And again, we've got various clients, in fact, everyone that is using Office 365 that is a customer of ours has Azure AD Connect or are still using Active Directory Federation services to be able to deliver that. And as we're supporting those customers, we don't have any known issues currently with the way that they've been deployed, and that covers various different scenarios across the board where some people may very well be using Server 2008, Server 2012, 2016, 2019, etc., and in various iterations of that deployment. So I think we're bang on time for today's event. So I would like to take this opportunity again to thank everybody for their attendance. I hope you found the content useful for today and it's something that you can take away back into your organizations. Please feel free to reach out to us should you have any further questions or would like to take us up on the opportunity to do a workshop or get some further information on how these things can be deployed. We do have fixed price packages that we can deliver a lot of this functionality for you, as well as provide you with the actual licenses that you need for this. So I appreciate it's a very difficult time for a lot of organizations in terms of large capital spends and ongoing costs, but it is something that we're helping a lot of our customers to make sure that their organization's data and services are still protected whilst they are working remotely. So on that note, really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you for all attending, and hopefully you'll attend the next one on Tuesday next week at 10 a.m. Thank you very much all. Bye.